First up, we have the lovely Celeste Gonzalez. So Celeste, there she is the director of Roo Labs at Rickety Roo, which is a local SEO agency. And her work focuses on local SEO, unsurprisingly, testing, and looking at user behavior for a range of Rickety Roo's clients across the home services industry. You have probably read some of her amazing content because she contributes to various industry publications. This is her very first time speaking at an event. It will not be her last, I know for sure. And here she is. We are super excited, Celeste, to hear your presentation on using user behavior data for a better search experience. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was a pretty good introduction there, but just go over that again. So this talk is about using user behavior data for a better search experience. And I'm Celeste Gonzalez, the director of Roo Labs at Rickety Roo, which is our SEO testing department. And the charity that I'm raising money for is the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. They're researching to find a cure for cancer, and they specifically provide treatment, travel, housing, food. Basically, everything is covered for the patients and their families. So a really great cause, and I'm glad to be speaking for today. So now let's get into the talk. You have 50 milliseconds to make a good first impression. This was a finding from a study from researchers at Carleton University, where they had showed users an image of a website for a mere 50 milliseconds, which is only a 20th of a second. And that was enough for users to already make a decision on how appealing or unappealing a website was. So a first impression of your website is very important. There's something called first impression bias. And within that, you have the halo effect or the horn effect. So think about it when you meet a person, you have a good first impression. The rest of your interactions with them, they're kind of going to be tainted in a positive light. That good first impression influences your perception as a whole of that person. And the same thing happens with websites. So that's called the halo effect. And then you have the horn effect, where you have a bad or a negative first impression, and basically your perception after that is influenced by that single negative trait. So when a user visits a website and they have a negative first impression, it kind of taints their experience as they go throughout it. So this is where creating a better search experience is very important. There's something called search experience optimization. There's a really great blog post by Sarah Fernandez on it that I'll share. And it blends SEO and UX to enhance a website holistically. So it's not just a focus of aiming to get users to the website. It's you're aiming to get them there, and then now what? It's you have to provide a good user experience for them to lead to conversions. And the tool I'll be talking about today that will help give you this user behavior data to run tests with or confirm or deny your suspicions about what's going on your site is Microsoft Clarity. It's completely free. You can use it on any type of site, no matter how big or how small. So I feel like this is really good for local businesses. Some of them might not have a lot of traffic. This is the perfect tool to use. However, there are other tools like Hotjar, Crazy Egg that you can use as well. If you're paying for them, go ahead. Clarity is free, so that's just what we'll be discussing today. But all of these types of user behavior analytics tools have the same insights. So we'll get into session recordings, heat maps, scroll depth, things like that. So let's get into the data. There are heat maps that are provided to you. So heat maps, there are click heat maps, so show you where users are clicking on a page. Area heat maps will show you the click-through rate in each area on a page. Scroll maps, so we'll show you how far down users are scrolling on a page and where they're leaving off. And then with certain Shopify sites with Clarity, you get conversion heat maps. There are also session recordings, time on page, dead clicks, rage clicks, and scroll depth. So session recordings, pretty basic. We know what those are. We'll see those. We've seen those before on other tools, time on page as well. Dead clicks and rage clicks we'll get deeper into, and your scroll depth. So now with sessions. One thing that I really like here with using this data is that you can segment out your sessions from new users and returning users and look at the pages per session for each group. So this allows you to see how different audiences use the site. And with that, you might see that returning users, they're used to how the site works. They know exactly where to navigate and what to do. They might be more decisive. With your new users, they don't know. This is their first time visiting the site. Maybe certain things aren't that intuitive to them. And, by looking at the session recordings and breaking up your sessions in this way, you might find those issues. And it might lead you to seeing that maybe there are better ways to optimize page layout. Then there's your scroll depth. So, that's how far users are scrolling down on the page. Very important to look at your average scroll depth. If you're seeing that 50% of users are only making it, not too far down on the page, and you have important content below that they're never seeing, you might need to change up the way you organize your content. It might be time to move anything that's below that, like average, that 50% mark up. Maybe it's super important, needs to go up above 75%. You want to make sure that things that you deem important for that page are visible. So for a service page, if there are no call to actions until the very bottom of the page, most likely your users are not reaching that at all. And it would be a good idea to move it up. Then we have the active time spent. So this is the amount of time a visitor is actually interacting with your site, so scrolling or reading the content. With this, with certain pages, if you're seeing that users are leaving it quickly, page didn't do its job, most likely. It didn't answer their questions. It didn't give them what they were looking for. Obviously, there's certain pages where you do, like a contact page, you don't expect them to spend 10 minutes on there. But other pages that are more informational, or maybe your service pages where they need to check things out a little bit more before they make a decision, if they're quickly leaving, it's probably not organized in a way that's most helpful to the user. And this you can use as an opportunity to update the content, organize it more effectively. Maybe it's missing content and you need to have that there to get them to stay. Then we have our dead clicks. So these are clicks where users believe an element on your site is clickable, or there should be some sort of action or response that they're expecting, but nothing happens. Think about it yourself. If you visited a website and you maybe thought something was a link, maybe the text was underlined, but then nothing happened when you clicked on it. So this is something that you can use to help figure out what should be interactive on a page, or what users are trying to search for, trying to find on a site, but it's just not working out for them. And maybe it has to do with your layout and how things are set up. Maybe the way the text looks, if you underlined it, makes it really look like a link. Or if there's an image on a page, users are trying to click into that image so that way they can see it zoomed in. That might be something to consider. Then we have our rage clicks. So similarly to the dead clicks, like you have someone who's clicking, but this time they're clicking so many times on an element on a page that should have a response, but they're not getting a response. Could mean that something's broken. Maybe the button just didn't lead them anywhere, broken link. Or it could be that maybe the site is loading too slowly. I don't know if you've ever done this before, but I have definitely tried to load a page and it was just, I was clicking the link and it was not loading fast enough. So I ended up clicking it a million times. Maybe it could be an indication that your site speed is a factor and something to look into. Then we have excessive scrolling. So this is when a user scrolls up and down on a page more than expected. I think the best way to think about this is a recipe blog post. So, if you've ever looked up a recipe online, there's an entire life story. You're trying to find out how to make an apple pie. You're getting the history of apples and Johnny Appleseed there before you could even get to any ingredients or instructions, bake time, anything like that. So, as a user, you're like scrolling, you're like, okay, let me get through this entire story so I can get to the actual information I'm looking for. Then maybe you pass it, so you have to scroll back up. I think that's the best way to put this. It's, a user not being able to easily find what they're looking for. And now we have quickbacks. So this is the ratio of users that go to a page and they immediately go back to the previous one. So this can let you know that the user didn't find that next page helpful. Or it could be that maybe the anchor text you were using for that next page was not actually a good representation of what that next page would be. So now that we understand the different types of data that are available in a user behavior tool, we get to use that to identify our user pain points. So you get to use Clarity Data, Hotjar, Crazy Egg, whatever it is, to find those user experience issues that you're seeing and make a plan to address them. The reason why we're doing this is because a better user experience overall leads to satisfied users who will spend more time on your site, and they're more likely to convert in the future. So going back to what I brought up at the beginning, you have that good first impression. You're going to have users who are more willing to work with you. They're willing to kind of go through your pages, look through the links, see what's going on there, possibly convert. You give them a negative first impression, they're not going to be as willing to work with you. You kind of tainted their experience overall. So if you make things difficult for them to find, they're just going to exit out and go to the competitor. So while this talk is about using the data to find your decisions, there are some best practices that I can give guidance on. Number one, don't ignore user feedback and behavioral data. This is really important. While we are working on the sites, maybe we've worked on it for months, we've worked on it for years, we can kind of get tunnel vision on what's going on here, and we might not see things in the same way that a new user does. So please don't ignore their feedback. Look into it, see if there's a pattern to it. Maybe it could have just been a single session recording where a user, had a dead click, but it actually wasn't really something like that. Like they could have just meant to scroll, but they accidentally tapped, something like that. But very important to use this data to find the patterns and determine a course of action based on that. And user feedback doesn't just necessarily mean your data in Clarity. Listen to what users are telling you. Go to Reddit, see what people are saying. What else? Other forums where they talk about it, your social media. If you have an Instagram or a TikTok and people are commenting saying, hey, the website isn't loading fast enough, don't ignore them. The next thing would be avoid overloading pages with too much content. You want to make sure that the important stuff is easy to read, easy to find. That is the focal point. You don't want to distract away from it. And make sure that your important content and call to actions, wherever applicable, call to action isn't necessarily needed on every single page, shows up above the fold. You want it to be the first thing that users see when they load. So now we'll get into some examples of that. So the first one, there's a site called How I Experience Web Today. And it's just an example of how horrible some websites are and what a terrible user experience people are providing. So with this screenshot, you can see there's some information. Boom, we have a social links bar. We have them asking for us to give them a review. We have a video in the way. We have that footer that's immediately asking for our information. We have a chat widget. As soon as I scrolled, boom, pop up, give me your information. That's way too much. It is very overwhelming as a user to see all of this. And I just want to click out and go somewhere else at this point. So only use what's actually important here. And how to use the data to tell you what's going on. Heat maps can tell you where users are or aren't clicking. So like with those chat widgets, maybe you think they're helpful, but if you actually look at the click data, you're seeing that the majority of users are actually Xing them out. They're not using it. Or Xing out of any other pop-ups. This can also let you know on the flip side which call to actions are actually attracting users. You'll get to see which ones are actually clicking into, which ones they're filling out their information. If it's just a button, which ones they're clicking on that will navigate them to the contact page. Then we have our second example. So this is about content that's important being too far down below the fold. Let's say I needed an exterminator for some pest control services. So I look up pest control services LA. Boom, this is what I get. As a user, all I see is just call to actions and like the H1 that's telling me pest control services. Like, okay, great. I know that you offer that. And here I'm bombarded with your phone number twice. And then a little phone call icon, an email icon. I don't really know anything about this company. This is the first page I'm navigating to. And I don't know why I should pick them. There's information that I would want to know if I'm booking these services before I'm immediately like, okay, just call us for information. So this is where you can use your scroll depth, click data, and quick backs to determine if users are actually satisfied with a format like this. If I'm booking pest control services, some things that a user would want to know would be, who this company is, pricing, are they even in my actual service area? If they're spraying chemicals, maybe I would want to know, are these chemicals safe for my dogs, my cats, my other pets? So we could change out the layout. So the before, H1, boom, that little blue box is the call to action. Then we have the important information. Instead, whenever H1, important information, then put the call to action. It's just a different way to organize it because you need to qualify who you are and why you're the best choice for something like this before you're immediately telling people, okay, just spend your money with me. And our third example is Fred Perry. So this is an e-commerce site, but this is just an example of listening to your audience and your potential customers or previous customers. So this person tweeted, man, at Fred Perry, your website sucks. Filters don't work. Every time you back out of browsing, an item goes back to the first item on the list. Terrible service. So I went to go confirm this. And it's true exactly what that user had said. This is where you really need to find out where your audience is. If you're a bigger brand, it's going to be easier to sort of find this information. It's totally fine to ask customers what they think about the site too. And you can go through the site yourself on mobile, desktop, different browsers to see how users are experiencing your site. So with like Clarity, you can see the percentage of users coming from different browsers and devices. Maybe most of your users are on Chrome on desktop, or they could be on mobile Safari. Go ahead and check all these out and see how users are actually experiencing it. And this was the example. So I went ahead and I was just on the first page of the Fred Perry's like men shopping section. I saw this brown jacket. I thought it looked nice. It's at the bottom of the first page. Clicked into it, decided, I don't want to purchase it. I clicked back, boom, I'm at the top of the first page again. So it is frustrating. It's like you're making it harder for me to spend my money with you. Now to put all of this into numbers and like the impact of these types of changes, we had a case study for a home building client. They had consistent growth in organic traffic, but their conversion rate for form submissions was less than 1%. So we went ahead with our recommendations and going through all of that user behavior data. We looked at our session recordings. We looked at the scroll depth. We were looking to see where people were clicking. And these were the recommendations that we came up with. So we decided to decrease the hero image size across the site. On practically every page you landed on, there was a giant hero image. So none of the important information was loading. The blog posts. So we segmented out just to look at the blog post pages. And the old format that they had was they had a hero image, a featured image, the contact form, and then the blog post content. And of course users were going to click out. They weren't able to see the information they were searching for immediately. It was just bombarded with images and then a form, and it's not what they were looking for. So what we had done was remove the hero image entirely, so there was just that featured image, and the contact form was moved below the blog content. We had also decided to add a call to action banner within part of the primary content on the floor plans page. This is a home building client, so they had a floor plans page with no call to actions on it at all. So we decided to add a banner there because the users who are visiting the site, they're looking for more information, they're looking to get the details. So having that call to action there isn't as invasive. And the other thing we had noticed was on the home page, the font colors were actually hard to read. And we were wasting some prime real estate above the fold with a call to action that led users to go to a watch the video button. There was a video of the owner of the home building company talking. Instead, we replaced it to be a contact button. So after implementing these changes, we saw growth in user sessions, 29% increase. There was a 6% increase in the active time spent. So now we were getting users to stay on the pages longer and to actually check out the information we were presenting to them. And we received a 122.22 increase percent in both form submissions and phone calls the 3 months after implementation. And then here's, a chart of that so you can see the numbers. So nothing that I had suggested there with the home building client was necessarily groundbreaking or anything out of the box. It was literally just what we were seeing with the user behavior data. So with small targeted improvements in user experience, you can see substantial results. 122% increase in conversions is a lot for just doing small things like reducing a hero image size and adding a call to action. It's very important to regularly check your session recordings and your heat maps. Things can change. You add new pages, new types of content on the site. It's good to keep up with it. It's good to still check in on those new users and seeing how they're navigating through your site. And it's very important to continue to use these insights to make data-driven decisions. While I did give you some gut check instinct type things for those examples, because I don't have the data to howIexperiencedthewebtoday.com or fredperry.com. You've got to use the data to confirm or, deny your suspicions on what's going on with the site and how users are interacting with the elements on it. And lastly, remember your work is never done. So that home building client, we improved the conversions for them. There's still more work to be done. What we had actually noticed was with that floor plans page, users wanted to click into the individual floor plans and see what was going on with them and get some more information. The client had never thought to create individual floor plan pages before, and now that was our next project on creating important content that users were looking for. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this was helpful.